What a year 2018 has been for Malaysia. In fact, it seemed to be a year of two halves. When we welcomed 2018, a lot of us did with this feeling of resigned acceptance that maybe nothing would change. What a difference a day makes. Now, more than 6 months removed from May, it is really hard to kind of remember how it used to be. As someone I met immediately after the election pointed out, everything looks the same, but nothing is. Okay, the rest of the world still ain't great. This porn star payer is still president. Brexit is still a mess and it's still happening. Europe is rioting and on fire. And warnings about climate change have ratcheted up. If the ongoing floods, typhoons and generally backbonkers weather weren't already an indication. But for Malaysia at least, amid all the things we gained or lost this year, one emotion is now very present. Hope. We are allowed to hope again. So as we bid farewell to 2018, here are the highlights of the year and what lessons we should bring with us into 2019 and the ones we should leave behind. Like stupid small sunglasses that make you look like Lu Fuji. Usually when you do a year in review, there are many stories, but this year, all of it was connected to just one, GE14. Depending on who you asked, it was either unexpected or really unexpected. Aside from the gerrymandering, fake news bill and the midweek voting, a lot of news flow seemed to indicate that, nothing would change. And the saviour turned out to be the most unlikely of persons. However, it is clear that once the euphoria has faded, that it has been anything but smooth sailing. While we were excited that the cabinet didn't seem to be exclusively staffed by datos this time around, we also complained that some of them didn't seem to be able to handle their positions. There has been infighting, disagreements, resignations, all of which people seem to think is the end of New Malaysia. They seem to forget that our fledgling government is barely a year old and still needs to find its feet. Hell, it took me 2 years to remember everyone's name in Game of Thrones, and I still have no idea who's sleeping with whose cousin. By no means I am saying that we should forgive the new government everything, but we now have the right to say whatever we want. Even if you didn't want Pakatan Harapan to win, their victory now gives you a right to voice your disappointment without fear. That's the one thing everyone should recognize. But it's not even that which I think we should bring with us into the new year. When the odds seemed insurmountable, it brought out the best of us. Let's not forget stories of people carpooling, fundraising, networks of complete strangers helping each other so that we could vote. So yes, if G14 proved anything, is that we can actually put aside our petty differences. And that for all of those looking for change, we stood up in one voice and said, enough. I am sure most of you remember where you were when ex-PM Dato Sri Najib Razak got arrested. When it first happened, there were vigils, protests and general ruckus. However, he has been dragged to court several times since then, and as some papers noted, the number surrounding him seems to have dropped. But he wasn't the only one. His wife, Datin Sri Rosmah, has seen her share of court dates, as has former UMNO head Dato Sri Zahid Hamidi. Adding to that list is Kunan, former 1MDB CEO Arul Kanda, and a whole assortment of people in their circles. We are still missing a Miranda Kerr ex, but judging by the reports, it seems that he is slowly running out of places to run. But it wasn't just cases here that drew attention. The US DOJ also charged Jolo in absentia, Goldman Sachs banker and Kimora Lee Simmons' husband Tim Leisner pleaded guilty, and Malaysia is bringing the Wall Street Bank itself to court. By the way, Kimora Lee Simmons blocked me on Instagram. True facts. With their trials coming up next year, it'll be a true test of Malaysia's legal system that for many years people have seen as broken. I'm sure most of you have read The $1 Billion Whale and the saga of 1MDB, judging by how fast the book sold out. And for those of you who didn't, well, apparently Michelle Yeoh is making a movie. But if you have, you were probably like me, extremely angry at Jolo's fritting away of money on women and gambling and crystal, and how all of that led to the state of how the country is in now. Because hidden behind shiny GDP figures was the dark realizations that we are billions in the hole. Something that is even more galling when you take into account GST, which I still believe is a fair tax in principle, but the proceeds of which were definitely misused. Add to that revelations of misconduct in terms of refunds as well as government organizations such as Felda and Tabung Haji, and you realize we barely know how deep that rabbit hole goes. Hence why Budget 2019 was such a palate cleanser. After years of the people's budget, it was a breath of fresh air to get something that seemed, very realistic. Yes, taxes went up in a few things, but there were some bright spots as well. More money to health and education, and less frittered away on mega projects. Some seemed more flash than sense. It is going to get tougher before it gets better, but as hard as that is, will we all be happy with the alternative if we kept spending the way we did before? Well, they all couldn't be good, could they? To be frank, racism is never a new problem, and especially not here. But this year it seemed that, emboldened by those in power, racists and bigots found a way to make their voice known. Racial tensions, normally simmering below the surface, have emerged in frightening and rather sad ways. Take the case of the Seafield Temple relocation, which erupted into tragedy that led to a life being lost. The cars were still on fire when people started pointing fingers, and for some reason it all led back to race. Because clearly your genetic heritage rules over free will and common sense, right? Look, these issues will always crop up. It's inevitable. It always will. But what we can change is how to react to them and how not to fall back into old tropes. To sum it all up, for a number of us, it feels like Malaysia has been given a chance to reset, and we must not squander it. Because there will always be those waiting in the wings to swoop back in and turn us back into the Malaysia of the last 60 years.
This is gonna work, Steve.
I know it is. Because I don't know what I'm gonna do if it doesn't.
Okay. So I don't want to end on a down note, so let's make 2018 be the year we finally say goodbye to
Baby shark do-do-do-do-do, baby shark do-do-do-do.
never again. Just saying. And Happy New Year, folks.